Today's occurrence happened in Death Valley, California. When Skye tried contacting her mother, Donna, after being sent home from the hospital, Donna didn't answer. It was out of character for Skye's mother. She wouldn't have just not answered when Skye called. She knew she had just been hospitalized. But even stranger, when Skye called around, no one had heard from Donna. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't know what. And she never could have imagined what happened to her family members while she was stuck, bedridden. I'm Tatiana, and this is the story of Donna, Gina, and Jenny. Quick disclaimer, reporting on this story varied widely, so I've done my best to put this story together in a way that gave the benefit of the doubt while also sticking to what actual statements I was able to get access to said. And without further ado, 62-year-old Donna Cooper lived in Pahrump, Nevada, a town about 60 miles from the entrance to Death Valley National Park. The town Donna lived in had about 36,000 people living in it at the time. It's a pretty dusty place, like many areas in the desert. And because she lived there, Donna wasn't a stranger to Death Valley. She had driven through there plenty of times and explored a pretty decent chunk of it. Now, this isn't the first Death Valley episode, but just as a refresher, Death Valley is in the southern Mojave Desert in eastern California and part of Nevada, so it crosses state lines. And it's east of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It got its name because, well, people died there in the 1800s, and they still do to this day. It is hands down one of the hottest places on Earth, especially during the summer months in America. Summer temperatures in America are from like April, May-ish to August or September for that region, but it's also hot outside of that time period, so keep that in mind if you plan on visiting. Temperatures are said to be upwards of 120 or 130 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. Even in the winter, it's still fairly warm with very little rainfall because it's in the rain shadow of 4 major mountain ranges. The landscape is this endless, super flat, dry land covered with like desert shrubs, cacti, and other desert vegetation, but there's also hills and mountains that are also about as barren as the flat land. And the landscape looks largely the same. The ground is rough. It's so easy to get lost, especially if you don't know what you're doing. And once you're lost, because so much looks exactly the same, you may not find your way back. It's possible to be lost out there for weeks to months on end and never see another person, depending on where you get lost at. But it is a national park, so there are many things to safely see and do out there if you're prepared. Donna was retired at this point and decided she wanted to check out an area she hadn't seen before with her 17-year-old daughter, Gina, and their house guest from Hong Kong, 19-year-old Jenny Leung. It's a random Thursday morning in July 2010, and Donna decided she wanted to check out a Spanish-style mansion in Death Valley called Scotty's Castle. According to legend, a man by the name of Walter Scott, nicknamed Death Valley Scotty, built that castle on top of his secret gold mine that funded the building of the mansion. But according to the National Park Service, the truth is that Death Valley Scotty was a swindler and a shady guy. He convinced this Chicago insurance magnate Albert Johnson to invest in this supposed gold mine and would come up with any number of disaster tales to explain why he had been unable to deliver the gold after several years. So Albert actually decided to come out and look at the gold mine one day and get a tour of Death Valley by Death Valley Scotty. Scotty actually had Albert do a super intense horseback trek through Death Valley, thinking that because Albert was such a city boy, being from Chicago, he wouldn't be able to hack it, especially since the guy's health was like permanently damaged from a train accident that almost killed him when he was younger. But Albert actually ended up loving Death Valley and decided to stay for about a month there. The dry, sunny climate actually really improved his health a lot too. Now, Albert never saw Walter's mine and was probably definitely being scammed, but Albert didn't seem to care because he loved the desert and grew to be great friends with Walter. The next 10 winters following that visit, Albert visited Death Valley with his wife, Bessie Johnson, and they both went with Walter on these desert expeditions. At some point, because of how frequently they visited the area, Albert suggested that they build something more comfortable for their visits and to get away from all the scorpions and rattlesnakes. So the Death Valley Ranch was built in the 1920s. Walter told everyone he was building the $2 million home with the profits he made from the gold mine, and that story gained traction. Albert even backed up the story to reporters who inquired about it by saying that he was just Walter's banker and that, yes, Walter owned the place. Now, construction on that mansion stopped in 1931 when Albert found out that a surveying error meant that the mansion was actually being built on federal land. And then, obviously, the Great Depression happened, so construction just never got restarted after that. The castle is actually still incomplete, just like it was when they stopped that construction. Unfortunately, today the castle's closed because a flood from around 3 inches of rainfall hit the area about 5 years after the story I'm telling you about Donna, Gina, and Jenny. And the National Park Service has been trying to restore areas of it since. The flood damage was pretty bad. Sections of roads were washed away. Lots of mud hit the house. It blew out some of the walls. Also, a fire hit the area after the flood too. But I'll get back to that at the end of this episode. Now, rewinding to 2010, Donna, Gina, and Jenny made it to Scotty's castle around 1 p.m., and they looked around the place for about 2 hours. When they left the mansion, it was Gina behind the wheel, according to some reports, and driving in the direction of home. On the way, they spotted a sign for a racetrack. The racetrack was something Donna had always wanted to check out. It's a dry lake bed where shifting boulders have left skid marks in the cracked mud. To describe it, if you've seen dried mud crack, that's how a lot of the desert floor in Death Valley and the Mojave Desert looks, like cracked polygonal patterns that fit together to make up the ground. The racetrack is an area where there are these huge boulders weighing up to 700 pounds or 320 kilograms, and they've been moved over time, leaving skid marks in the ground leading up to wherever the boulder stopped moving at. It looks pretty cool. Pictures will be on Facebook and Instagram. Check the show notes for the link. But for a long time, people didn't know what made them move. Like, the boulders would just be in a different spot and look like it was just dragged there randomly over the decades. According to the National Park Service, scientists caught the phenomenon in person and on video after a few years of observation in 2013. And they realized that for the rocks to move, this rare combination of events had to happen. First, the playa, which is a dry lake bed, fills with water, but it has to be deep enough to let floating ice form during cold winter nights, while also being shallow enough to expose the rocks. Once the pond freezes from overnight temperatures, sheets of window pane ice form, but they have to be thick enough to maintain strength and thin enough to move freely. When it's sunny, the ice melts and splits into large floating panels, which are pushed by wind across the playa pool, and those sheets push the rocks in front of them, and the rocks being pushed leave trails in the now softened mud beneath the surface of the pool. Previously, they thought hurricane-force winds might be a factor to the rocks moving, but it turns out that the wind just has to be like 10 miles an hour along with these conditions, and they can move anywhere from a few seconds all the way up to 16 minutes. Pretty cool. To me, anyways. Now, Gina and Jenny were curious about checking out the racetrack too, so Gina turned the car west on Route 267 before turning off the highway and going south on a rough, rocky dirt road. After driving 10 miles in that direction, she realized she must have turned the wrong way. She figured backtracking would be the smartest thing to do and tried to go back the way they came and ended up at Tea Kettle Junction, which is a dirt road intersection where multiple unmarked roads cross. The sign for Tea Kettle Junction actually has dozens of different colored tea kettles hanging from it. It's pretty cute to me, and Donna must have thought so too because she got out the car with everyone else to take a picture of the sign before they got back in to continue on. They continued driving, but after another 10 miles, Donna realized they weren't back to where they started, so since she was now driving, she realized she must have taken the wrong road once everyone got back in the car. At this point, she decided to turn on her GPS. Donna had actually named her GPS Nell, after her mother, because she said her mother was always telling her how to do things and where to go. Now, some reports say that Donna put in for the GPS to take them back to Scotty's castle, but Donna would later say that she put in for the GPS to take her home. So they're following the instructions that the GPS is giving them, and it went about as well as one would expect using a plug-in GPS in the middle of the desert could go, at least from a 2025 perspective. The GPS said things like, drive 550 feet, then turn right on unnamed road, turn left, then drive 1 mile, turn right, turn left, recalculating, drive 5 miles, then make a U-turn, recalculating, make a U-turn, recalculating, make a U-turn. You get it, right? So on and so forth. So Donna kept following the GPS, and the longer they drove back and forth, going in circles and up and down these rough, unmarked roads that only got rockier and more narrow as time went on, the more ill Gina felt. Gina started feeling increasingly nauseous in the back seat, the more her head throbbed, and she complained that she wanted to go home. Allegedly, Donna told her to stop being so immature, and at some point they realized they were driving up into high country. In the passenger seat, poor Jenny was, I'm sure, just fed up with the situation and American heat and just very much over this trip. It was over 121 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 49 degrees Celsius outside of the car, and even though the car they were driving had air conditioning, the air is still dry. Jenny's lips were dry to the point of being painful, and they were on the last of the 4 16-ounce water bottles that they brought along. Jenny didn't want to be the person to drink the last one, and she actually even faked taking a drink when Donna handed her the last bottle. But Donna pushed Jenny to drink her share of the water and kind of chastised her in a way moms do when she noticed Jenny faked taking a sip. So Jenny took one real sip and swished it around her mouth for a little while before swallowing, just to kind of drag it out. You see, Jenny came to the United States about 2 months prior in May, so she hadn't been here for long, and up to that point, she had enjoyed her time there. She went traveling with Donna to all over the country since, according to reporting, 19-year-old Jenny is Donna's friend and house guest and not 17-year-old Gina's. Anyway, Jenny had been traveling with Donna literally from coast to coast, from Florida to Los Angeles and San Francisco and California, even the Grand Canyon. And as much traveling as that is compared to the average American, especially in such a short period of time, this dry, scorching hot desert drive was just a few steps too far for Jenny. As the hours passed, the desert landscape just stretched for miles, and every single call all 3 women made to 911 failed. None of them had cell reception, and like many people falsely believe, they thought that even if you're in an area with no cell reception, you'll still be able to call 911. But that simply isn't the case. They were lost in the desert, and it wasn't cooling off, even though the sun was starting to get low. And the only thing they had for nutrients in the car was the rest of the last bottle of water, some cookies, a bag of chips, and 2 apples. The car had a little more than a quarter tank of gas, and the trunk at least had a first aid kit, a toolkit, extra shoes, sweaters, and blankets. But that's about it. By 8 p.m. that evening, the GPS had guided them to a dead end rimmed with rocks. Donna was starting to internally panic, but outwardly she was pretty calm. She was a mother to 8 children that she had raised with her husband, Roger. One of their kids was with Roger in Florida after 21-year-old Sky had gallbladder surgery. Donna knew the gravity of having 2 young people in the car with her, needing her to get them out of the situation alive. At that dead end, Gina saw this hard-to-see trail going into the brush, so the trio decided to follow that trail downhill, and it led to a dirt road that was much smoother than what they had been driving on. As they continued on the trail, they came on to these mailboxes. There were 3 connected mailboxes. They spotted them after they rounded a bend and went past a mostly dried up salt lake. When they decided to look inside the mailboxes, there was a handwritten note that said, "Sorry we missed you. Stop by sometime. We are under the big trees." Now, where those mailboxes were, it looked like there was nothing else around. It was the same desert landscape as everything else they'd been driving through at that point, besides an isolated stand of trees a bit beyond them. Otherwise, they were pretty much looking at the same dry desert shrubs that they had been staring at since that morning. Now, Gina saw this and suggested they see if anyone's back there, if anyone's around. But allegedly, Donna told her that they couldn't waste time since it was sunset now, and that because they were on a good road, they would be able to find their way out. Donna decided to continue following the GPS instead, and it started leading them into the mountains, a fairly barren landscape. As they continued driving higher and higher up, Gina looked out of the windows, back in the direction from where they came from, and she thought she saw some type of habitation, something that indicated people, or maybe even several people, lived there. But the sun was pretty much gone now, the sky was starting to get dark, so it seemed like they traveled too far at that point to turn around. Now, no one had heard from anyone in the car for hours, but because Donna was known to be independent and more spontaneous, only one person felt something was wrong when they hadn't heard from Donna as night fell. At 10 p.m., Donna pulled the car over. They were out of gas, and the odometer showed that they had actually driven at least 100 miles since leaving Scotty's castle earlier that day. Donna's GPS indicated that they were at over 7,000 feet in elevation, and realizing they wouldn't be going anywhere anytime soon, Donna told Gina and Jenny that they would be camping, and immediately, poor Jenny asked if there were wild animals out there. Donna responded telling her that there was wildlife out there and to roll up the windows. After rolling up the windows, the last of the remaining food that they had was shared between them, and they all took one swallow of the water that they had left. At 6 a.m. the next morning, the stranded women could see that where they had stopped last night left them high above the valley, near a several hundred-foot drop-off and a sparse grove of pines. Donna was shocked. In the dark of the night, she didn't actually realize that they were basically on the edge of a cliff at such a steep drop-off. She said it was scary. When she went to try and start the car, the engine wouldn't turn over. Gina stated that they needed to do something to get someone to see them, so Jenny and Donna gathered stones and organized them in a way that spelled out help on some flat ground near them. Gina spent time building a fire pit that she filled with pamphlets from Scotty's castle and branches. Unfortunately, when she tried to use the cigarette lighter in the car to light the kindling, it just smoldered. According to Donna, the car has to actually be on for it to light, otherwise it just mostly gets warm. At some point during that morning, they spotted an airplane and tried to catch the attention of anyone inside. Jenny even waved the yellow emergency blanket that they had from the car, and Gina used a CD from the car as a signal mirror, so she tried to have the sunlight reflect off the shiny back part of the CD to try to blind anyone in the airplane so that they would notice them. But no one inside of the plane saw them. And neither did any of the multiple planes that followed that one. By 11 that morning, the last of the water was gone, and Gina had decided to go scout to see what she could find. She hiked maybe 2 miles or 2 hours from the car. Her mom said it was 2 hours. Another report said it was 2 miles. Maybe it was both, but all Gina saw during that walk was desert. Well, besides the very clearly abandoned for a long time campsite that she passed. When Gina returned, she saw her mother and Jenny digging for cactus roots. While Gina was gone, the pair had resorted to chewing on pine needles that they gathered after failing to find some type of cactus that had drinkable liquid. Donna had cut open a few cacti with her jackknife, but none were the type that they could drink out of. The ones she cut open mostly had sticky pulp inside. Donna knew from what she read one time that there were cacti with liquids safe for drinking somewhere out there, but she didn't know which ones. She also knew the pine needles that she had her and Jenny chewing on before Gina returned contained much-needed nutrients and moisture. When Gina made it back, she suggested that they go to the place they stopped at yesterday, the place with the mailboxes. Her mother told her that the car won't start, so how exactly did she plan for them to get there? Gina suggested they try starting the car just one more time, and to their luck, it worked. The sound of the car starting actually scared them, but they quickly jumped in, Donna behind the wheel, and they started down the mountainside. At each and every dip in the road, Donna floored the accelerator to make sure that they would have enough momentum to make it up the next rise. She was more than aware that if they stalled, it would be completely over with for them all. Those dips were huge. They'd have no shelter, no way to get out, and they had no water. They made it 30 miles. Well, some reports say 30 miles. Some just say they drove for a while. Now, I can only surmise that when they stopped the night before, it was because the gas gauge was on E, but it wasn't empty. If you're someone who drives down to beyond when the gas light comes on, you know that depending on your vehicle, you can have anywhere from like 20 to 35 miles still left in the tank. That was a regular thing I used to do as a teenager, no matter how much my dad told me not to. But after living through several natural disasters and blackouts, I don't do that so much anymore. And I suggest if you're someone who does, you shouldn't either. So it was either that or heat and evaporation affecting the gas still left in the tank. But Donna, Gina, and Jenny made it back to the road by the Salt Lake with the gas fumes still left in the car. And to their relief, they made it to the mailboxes. They were so happy that when they saw them come into view, they literally screamed. They were just so hopeful for a chance at shelter. They stopped the car but were a bit confused because that note from before indicated that where the people might be at was near trees. The only trees they could see were just a small grouping of them a bit away, and they weren't very tall compared to the other shrubbery in the desert. But they were a bit greener, so spotting that green patch of vegetation a little bit away, they decided to walk towards it. During that walk, they could feel the ground burning through the soles of their sneakers because of how hot it was out there. Once they made it to the trees, there was a wire fence and padlock gate visible, and they could see 3 trailers around this freestanding, screened wooden porch. They yelled out to see if anyone was around, but no one answered, and all of the trailers were locked. But behind the biggest trailer, Donna found a garden hose attached to a spigot, and they were so dehydrated and relieved that it didn't matter the water was hot. All 3 of them drank that water like it was nobody's business before laying down to take a nap on the wooden porch. Now, after they woke up, Gina went to grab the toolkit from the car. She went to the biggest trailer and unscrewed the hinges on the door. She wasn't able to get the door open, though, so she got a crowbar and pried the padlock off of one of the other smaller trailers. Inside of there were some packets of instant ramen and cranberry oatmeal, half a box of spaghetti, and a few cans of chili and beans, along with about 8 half cases of beer. Donna could tell from looking at it that the food wouldn't last longer than just a couple of days at most, but if they managed to survive in the heat, that beer would keep them afloat for about 2 weeks. They couldn't stay in the trailer after breaking in. There was no air conditioning. The air inside made it feel like a furnace, so they got the 2 mattresses from inside and they brought them onto the porch because at least the porch was a little cooler since it was shaded. At that point, they sat down to eat the can of beans and chili before using some jars and bottles that they found in a trash can and filling them with water. They were worried that the hose might run dry at some point, and they just wanted to make sure that they had at least some water saved just in case. It's about this time that Sky, in Florida, is making it home from the hospital after surgery. Sky is Donna and Roger's 21-year-old daughter who was in the hospital for gallbladder surgery, and the day prior, while she was there, she just kept telling her father that something was wrong when she couldn't contact her mother. Now, Roger was used to his wife, and he knew how she could be. He wasn't very concerned at this point. He knew that she was independent, and not hearing from her the day before just didn't raise the red flags for him that maybe it should have. But honestly, he hadn't even been told that they were planning to go to Scotty's castle. He didn't know that they were going to be in Death Valley. Almost no one did. It was a spur-of-the-moment trip. The only thing Donna had told Roger was that she wanted him to tell Sky to call her once Sky was out of the hospital to find out how she was doing and to make sure she was okay. But now, Sky was home, and every single call she's made to Donna's phone at this point just kept going straight to voicemail. There were no updates on Donna's social media, like Facebook, and all of this just made Sky even more worried. So she managed to get access to Donna's credit card accounts, and she could see that the last charges happened Thursday afternoon when Donna bought Gina a t-shirt from Scotty's Castle gift shop. After seeing this, Sky decided to call Charlene Dean. 51-year-old Charlene was a reporter for a local newspaper and an old friend of Donna's. She was staying with Donna's family in Pahrump in exchange for house sitting for them while they were out of town. Charlene had known Donna for long enough at that point that when Donna and the 2 girls didn't come home the night before for dinner, she wasn't worried. She honestly just assumed Donna changed her plans because that wasn't something that was out of character for her. So when Sky called Charlene to see if maybe her mother had returned home or if she had heard from her or something, Charlene said no. A few hours later, Skye called the supermarket where her sister, Gina, was employed as a courtesy clerk. And even though Skye was in the Eastern time zone, she knew Gina's shift started at 4 p.m. Pacific time. But the person she spoke to at Gina's job said that Gina didn't clock in. And it wasn't until this point where Skye told her dad that Gina wasn't at work that Roger said that he was now very worried. At this, Skye called Charlene again, and they both teamed up to call the sheriff's departments in multiple different counties, along with the ranger station at Death Valley National Park and the California Highway Patrol. Unfortunately, it was just too late in the day for them to do a full search, and Skye and Charlene were told as much. By nightfall, Gina had managed to get a signal fire lit using matches from the kitchen of one of the trailers and logs she found stacked in the yard. That night, Donna, Gina, and Jenny didn't get much sleep. They had to get up and douse themselves off with water every 15 minutes because of just how intense the heat was. As morning started coming around, Donna and Jenny wrote "Help, call police" in the dust on the back windshield of the car they were driving, and they made a cross or an arrow type of situation in the dirt with tree branches. A bit after that, they managed to finally break into that big trailer, but there wasn't much inside that would be useful to them. Then Gina and Jenny decided to break into the third trailer. Gina pried open a window and Jenny crawled inside. Inside of that third trailer, there was a CB radio, but they couldn't get it to work as needed. They removed the radio and its antenna from the trailer and hooked it up to the car battery. When they moved the dial, they could hear static, but that was all they heard. And after about 10 minutes of that, the static died out too. Now, Gina at this point, possibly the only one in this story I relate to, as I'm the oldest sibling in my family, and I feel like I'm constantly the one to tell my parents and siblings and other family members important and correct information just to have them ignore me and come back upset when the pie lands in their face. She's not the oldest, so the struggle is different, but like me at times, at this point, she's at her wit's end and just ready to sob. Her mom, probably realizing that Gina was about to fall all the way apart, suggested that everyone get cleaned up as a way to calm down. Jenny and Donna took baths first. They filled up the tub in the first trailer that they broke into with water from outside, and Gina was the last to take a bath around 5 p.m. At the time, Donna was washing Gina's hair while she was in the tub, and that's when they both heard Jenny screaming. Jenny was yelling at them to come outside while waving a yellow emergency blanket all over the place. Donna immediately sprints outside and leaves Gina, and Gina had to throw on some clothes without even bothering to dry off first before following her mom out. Outside, they could hear a loud noise. It was a California Highway Patrol helicopter circling over them. The pilots inside landed and gave them as much fresh water as they could drink safely while checking the trio's vital signs. The pilots were also EMTs. The women appeared to be healthy, and while they were being checked over, one of the men actually told them that they were honestly just about to assume that they were dead and fly back to base when they spotted them. They'd been searching the area for over 6 hours and were low on fuel when they decided to just really quickly check the most remote part of the park before heading back. And that's where they were found. In Saline Valley, one of the most isolated desert valleys in America. The routes in the area are unmaintained and extremely bumpy at times, but there are also a number of cabins, abandoned mines, and other attractions in the area. It's just that not many people go there, especially in the summer. It was actually Donna's car that caught the pilot's eyes because they hadn't seen one single car all day up to that point. The three women, Donna, Gina, and Jenny, were given the choice to be flown one by helicopter to the nearest town, Lone Pine, or to wait for a backcountry campground operator to bring them a can of gas and give them directions back to the highway. They chose the second option. So once that park official showed up and helped them fill up their tank, it was nighttime. They were given the directions to the highway, and the three women thanked their rescuers and drove away. They made it back home without any further incident after that, and Gina went on to enroll in nursing school after being inspired by a conversation with one of their rescuers. Jenny would go back to Hong Kong after her ordeal, but she returned to America to live with Donna's family and attend a local college. So I think it's like a student exchange living situation. And maybe she just came to America early during the summer just to get acquainted with the people she would be possibly staying with during the school year, who she would be living with for college or something like that. Now, this experience didn't sway Donna too much. Apparently, she wasn't put off by her experience in Death Valley and the desert that she calls home, going as far as to say that she didn't doubt for a single second that they would make it out of there. And now, for as many wrong things as the group did, like not letting people know of their changing plans when out in Death Valley, not just stopping for the night at the mailbox and seeing if there was someone there to help or somewhere where they could stay, continuing to drive aimlessly when lost, not listening to Gina, although I stan how much of a get-it-done girl she was, and even not checking that they were even in the right vehicle for their little side mission. Because to be clear, they were in this small Hyundai hatchback car trying to see the racetrack, even though the national park clearly advises online that because of how rough and remote the road is, you need to be in a 4x4 vehicle with high clearance and very good tires. There's even a wooden sign out there that says high clearance 4x4 recommended. Online, they advise against standard rental vehicles and say that flat tires are common, also that there is no cell service in that area, and that driving off-road is strictly prohibited. There are also directions explaining how to get there and where the road it seems like the three women accidentally took leads, saying that path usually requires a 4-wheel drive. There's also them mentioning that the way to get there, it sounds like where Donna and Gina and Jenny may have turned off and decided after 10 miles that they were going the wrong way. Online, it seems like you actually have to drive that direction for 26 miles. So if they were even on the right road, they didn't drive far enough to get to their destination. Not that they were in the right car to go there anyway, but I digress. Donna would later say in an interview that the terrain just tore her car up, and I'm not surprised because national park rangers have said that a lot of the cars that they have to pull out of the desert look like they went straight through a cheese grater. Now, there were things that Donna did do right? As someone who lived out in the desert, she had supplies in the car. She had blankets, clothes, tools, and car repair things, a first aid kit, and they had brought food and water for the day. She claimed in an interview that I found after she received, I guess, a bunch of backlash about mindlessly following the GPS. In that interview, she said that she did have maps in the car. A separate report I found said that she had an atlas, but that atlas only showed the major roads, as many do, and not the local roads or any side roads. So if she did have a map in the car, the atlas is a thumbs up. But obviously make sure you have local maps or more detailed ones as well, and also just stay on the main roads and look up where you're going prior to going there. Another thing they did right was that they had a full tank. They started out the day with a full tank of gas. But by the time they decided to head for the racetrack, they had maybe half a tank, and if possible, they really should have refilled the tank back to full before going on that little detour, although gas stations are few and far in between in that area. But if you see one, fill up. Don't wait until the next one because you might not make it to the next one. And obviously, tell people where you're going. Let people know that you're changing your plans, you're updating your plans. You're in Death Valley. But, and I'm saying this knowing full well that this is hindsight, Donna should have had more. You live in the desert. Why are we not packing plenty of spare water, especially considering you have multiple people in the car? Depending on the person, it's recommended on a normal day that you consume at least 3 liters of water. Stuck in way over 100 plus degree weather and in the desert, that need doubles, if not triples, and there's multiple people involved. So if that means leaving a pack of plastic water bottles in the trunk before you head out, so be it. There should also have been something not melty and non-perishable, like granola bars or other dry snacks in the car, at least more of them. Now, I'm no stranger to the extreme southern heat, and I know firsthand what happens when you leave things in the car, so obviously make sure whatever you leave in the car is items that won't go bad after being left in a really hot car or will explode or anything. Or you can just be the guy who brings items in and out of the car every time you go somewhere. And I'm not saying water bottles and granola bars left in a deathly hot car will taste great, but you'll live to see another day, possibly leached chemicals in the water bottles will be forgotten when you're about to die from dehydration and heat stroke. I promise. But I guess I'm surprised that someone who lives in the area would leave the house not unprepared, but not prepared enough. I've seen people who are doing solo multi-day camping trips say that they bring like 12 gallons of water with them to that area. Others say they keep at least 3 gallons in the car if they plan to drive through that area, even just on the highway, because a flat tire out there can very easily become a death sentence, especially if you don't have the tools to change the tires or you're in a vehicle that doesn't have a spare. I mean, I think Donna had supplies to do a simple tire repair, but I don't know if she had a spare. But even if she did, she's in a Hyundai car, an accent, one of the really small ones. And it's definitely not fit for the terrain. An axle could have broken. Then what? Because fixing an axle to a car is not a quick or easy fix that you're just going to have the supplies for in your trunk. And honestly, even if you stay on the main roads, it can sometimes be a long time before people drive by. If you're remote enough, days to weeks, maybe months. A way to have lighting like matches stored properly or placed in the car before leaving in that cargo bag would be perfect, especially during winter over there where at night it's really cold and it could get to be freezing. A flashlight would have been great too. I think if it's possible, also not just having a general atlas, but really more localized, specialized maps that show the roads and side roads should the need arise is great. And obviously not blindly following the GPS like Michael Scott driving into the lake on The Office. And to be clear, this isn't to bash Donna. It's for awareness. My awareness as well as yours going forward. Learning is how we can prevent these mistakes ourselves. And it can save lives. And in no way am I advising or advocating for breaking and entering. But let's just say, I'm surprised that they waited so long to get into the trailers, although I understand the multitude of reasons behind choosing to wait. And as for them getting lost by overly trusting the GPS, Donna did eventually say that she got rid of that GPS because it ended up getting stuck one day on trying to take her home and she just couldn't fix it. And according to several reports, industry experts agree that while a GPS is an invaluable tool to have on the road, it gives motorists a false sense of security that if they blindly follow the directions from the GPS, they'll reach their destination. With this situation and so many others, the issue is blindly trusting the GPS, but also that those companies don't update maps frequently enough. One video taken around this time had the GPS leading people through Death Valley and telling them to take roads that didn't exist, that literally weren't there or that had been washed away over 30 years prior and no longer accessible. So the system hadn't been updated in at least 30 years. Donna really trusted the one she had because it showed longitude, latitude, their elevation, where they were, and it even told her that there were 5 satellites following them and their location. So to her, she didn't have a reason not to believe it. I know with Apple, they have the ability to have offline maps. So if you don't have a connection, if you downloaded an up-to-date version of the map of an area, you can access it. Obviously, only if your phone is charged. And to their credit, Donna, Gina, and Jenny's phones were charged and they had portable chargers, so they were keeping their phones on. They just lacked service. And obviously, Apple did not have offline downloadable maps in 2010. But updated atlases and detailed paper maps that you actually have taken the time to understand definitely goes a long way. And as for Scotty's Castle, like I mentioned before, the National Park Service was offering limited walking tours of the grounds to help fund the repairs from the damages sustained from the flooding and fire. But a lack of funding is why it's not complete yet, like 10 years after the fact. But as far as I can tell, touring isn't happening anymore, at least right now for anyone. But you can donate to the nonprofit that keeps Death Valley safe, including their search and rescue efforts, and is working to restore Scotty's Castle. The Death Valley Natural History Association is the name of the organization. I have the link to donate to them in the show notes, and even a few dollars if you can spare it goes a long way. And if you can't donate, then please at least share this episode with others you think might enjoy it. The more awareness to this type of issue, the better, especially if it's someone who you think will support Death Valley preservation and search and rescue services, because the nonprofits and rescue services, can always use more help. I'll also be donating a portion of the proceeds from this episode to the Death Valley Natural History Association. Stay safe, and see you on Tuesday for a bonus episode, and on Thursday for Thanksgiving for those who celebrate it. All sources can be found at occurrencepod.com, which is linked in the show notes, along with any other relevant information.